Hello.
Hi, Alicia. How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm good too. Thanks.
So, Hase, I had a question for you. How long is your webinar today?
I think it'll be similar to the other ones. I think a half hour and then maybe Q&A.
Okay.
It's hard to know since I haven't given it before, but that's my
Okay.
target. Is that okay on your end?
Yep. Totally fine. I in my calendar when I saved it as a calendar event, it saved for like almost 2 hours. So it's like,
Can you imagine a 2-hour webinar? Thank goodness. Just realized I have some distracting items in the background. How are things in your world?
They are going well. Some good news this afternoon with the trial. So
Yeah, I know. What a relief.
yes.
But it's like eggshells, but yeah, I'm relieved. It was kind of the only conceivable outcome, but it's like it's funny that we're even unsure.
Right? Yeah. Well, when I heard that the jury hadn't been out for that long, I kind of figured, I was like, well, pretty sure I know what the result is going to be, but
yeah, thank goodness. Yeah, how's work life? Are you guys still feeling productive and safe at home and all that?
Yeah. I'm hoping to go into the office 1 day per week this summer.
Oh, nice.
Because I have a program, RU program that I run this summer, and so I'm kind of looking forward to that. And then yeah, busy. This is a busy time of year for me because of the RU program that I run this summer, and just trying to get everything ready for it. So yeah, but
cool. How many students are in
it? 18 this year, which is a big number for us. Usually we kind of started with 10. We slowly grew up to 13 or 14. And this year we're going to do 18 because last year we ran a shortened, just 2-week program. And we wanted to be able to provide opportunities for those students that participated last summer, but then also to new students as well. Yeah. So yeah, so it'll be a lot of students this summer, but I think it'll be fun. It'll be interesting. It's kind of going to be a hybrid of virtual and in person. We're going to do like all of our cohort meetings and professional development virtually, but about a little over half the students are going to be doing in-person work with their mentors, and then the other half will be doing mostly virtual work. So yeah, it'll be interesting.
That'll be interesting. And what was it last summer? It must have been all virtual.
It was all virtual last summer. Yeah. Yeah, but we learned a lot of, I think, helpful things last summer that we can apply to this summer. So
yeah, cool. And have you been vaccinated?
I have. Yeah, I just got my second one yesterday morning.
Oh, how are you feeling?
Pretty good. I mean, my arm is really sore. My neck is really sore.
Yeah.
And I think I've felt a little spacey the last couple of days.
Yeah.
But other than that,
that's not bad.
Fine. Yeah, it's not bad compared to a lot of people, I think. So
Blair are in bed on the second day, so good for you.
Yeah. How about you?
Yeah, we had it in March, our second doses. We just got really lucky and got them pretty early. So
yeah. Oh, that's nice.
Which is good because I work at the ski school and that was not enjoyable.
Yeah.
It's just dicey, you had to just be really strategic about every move you made.
Right.
So it was nice, but yeah, it feels good. I mean, we're still super careful, but I'm less scared of things. So yeah. Oh, I think you just muted yourself.
No, but Anna, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, Anna said she couldn't hear me for a brief bit in the last webinar, or last meeting that I had. So I don't know what's going on with my sound.
Yeah. Okay. Do you know how many people we have for today? It seemed like there was a lot of interest in at least the tweets on this one.
I don't know.
When you open the room.
How many are registered today?
Okay. I know that it's not entirely clean people, which is great because we can kind of bring, show some new people what clean is about.
Right.
So, and there's some Montana people because I was tweeting it, and that the renewable energy jobs thing is particularly damning for Montana. So, or another way to use that is it's particularly useful for Montana. Could be particularly motivating. So, I think there'll be some people, but yeah, hopefully it was a really fun thing to work on. So I hope there's good interest.
Yeah, I know. It sounds like a really, I mean, I think just the topic is really interesting. I would think we would have a lot of people join us today.
How was the one yesterday? Or are you and Katie alternating?
We're alternating. And there's one tomorrow.
Right.
I don't think there was one yesterday.
I thought there were 3 total.
Oh, maybe there was.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I wasn't paying close attention to the Earth Week stuff. Katie had said she had a lot on her plate, and I was like, well, can I help with any of the webinars? And so,
cool.
So she assigned me to this one.
There you go. Cool. Well, it's nice to work with you. Cool. So, and are you going to do the normal thing, like give a quick, like we'll open the room and just do the quick start it off kind of thing?
Yeah, and then I'll try to put all these links in the chat as you talk.
Yeah, and as there are a lot of them. I just figured I'd give them all to you. I'm just gonna.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's helpful. Very helpful.
Program. Cool. And then I'm gonna go ahead and do the share. Get that going. Those here. All right. I think I'll just leave it like that. So you're seeing the first slide, I assume the title slide.
Mm-hmm.
I'll do it like that for the moment because when we go to, or no, I can do that. I can never remember how you can go to see. Oh, there it is. See the chat and stuff like that. But I'm gonna once I get going, I'm gonna actually turn off the video and all that stuff.
Okay.
You guys having spring weather or still wintry?
It snowed yesterday, about 6 inches. But quite a bit of it's actually melted now. I mean, there's nothing on the roads or the sidewalks that I can see. So, yeah, I mean, generally, I can't remember, did you ever live in Colorado?
No.
Okay.
You're like up higher, right? You're not.
No, I'm in the Denver area.
Oh, you are, okay.
So about a mile high. But yeah, I mean, it'll snow one day and then be 50 the next and everything else. So, and then we've had really weird days where it was, I think last year it was 70 one day and then it dropped down to close to 0 in like 24 hours or something. And it created, what were they calling it? Like, I don't know, it was creating these weird, because there was so much of a drop in pressure.
Yeah.
It was creating these weird sounds that kind of sounded like bombs.
Really?
Yeah, but up in the atmosphere. And there was a word for it, and I can't remember what it was called.
Wow, neat.
That the meteorologists used. But yeah, that was that was really interesting.
Sounds cool. And yes, and weird.
Yeah, I had no idea that a storm could make those sounds. So it was kind of like snow thunder, but it wasn't, I mean, obviously it wasn't caused by lightning. It was caused by something having to do with the changes in pressure or something.
Yeah.
So
cool.
Yeah.
Neat. Fun stuff. Yeah, I'm just a bit north of you in Montana, and we get the same swings like this time of year. It's a wild ride, but it's good because you can either ski or garden. You just can't do only one and only the other. You have to be able to switch back and forth.
Right. Yeah.
But I'm looking forward to warm weather.
Have you guys gotten like enough snow out there this year? Or do you think you guys will be going into
right on the edge of enough?
Or...
Right there, like barely.
Yeah, I mean, luckily we had that giant snowstorm in March, so we're closer. We're still, I don't think, at 100% of where we should be, but before that giant snowstorm we had, where we got like, I think the Denver metro area got a little over 2 feet of snow. In mountains got like, 4 feet of snow. There was a lot of people concerned about what our water level was going to look like for the summer.
Yeah, I know, it's a constant worry. And it was bad last year, and it's I guess farther west from us looks pretty bad, like in the Southwest too. I guess Colorado, yeah, that's right. Keating,
yeah, we're kind of considered part of the Southwest, yeah. So
cool. Yeah. How are we doing on time? A couple minutes.
Oh. What else do you have going on in your work world?
I'm taking this work about the jobs and trying to make a Montana specific report that we can use. I'd like to generate some media attention. Our state legislature is being absolutely horrible. So I'm trying to figure out I need to write an op-ed and kind of get more involved and try to be one of a million people pushing back from our current, they're like just doubling down on our one coal power plant, just trying to keep it operating as long as possible. It's really frustrating. That's part of what motivated this. Which is, volunteer work, so I have to balance that with work like this that actually pays. So.
Right.
And then still skiing, and then and then skiing when it's nice out, when it's snowy. So it's a good routine. Cool. Should we let people in?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and let people in. Hello, everyone. For those that can hear me, we'll get started in just a couple minutes here. Just wait another minute or so to see if we get some more people to join us today. Okay, well, thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you all have had a chance to get outside this week and celebrate the beauty of our Earth. It is Earth Week. And so we do have a special webinar today in celebration of Earth Week, brought to you by Karin Kirk. She's a geologist and science writer who has been working with the Climate and Energy Awareness Network since the program was launched in 2010. And she is going to be talking about how the Earth's wind and sun can grow American jobs. The webinar will last approximately 30 minutes today, and we'll have time for questions at the end. My name is Alicia Christensen, and I work with the CLEAN Network. CLEAN stewards a collection of over 700 climate and energy science educational resources, and also supports a community of professionals committed to improving climate and energy literacy. Before we get started today, I just want to point out the chat and the Q&A. Please put questions directly into the chat or Q&A, and I will try to answer them throughout the talk, or if I can't answer them, Karin can answer them at the end of her talk. If you are just joining us for one of our CLEAN webinars, note that recording of previous webinars can be found on our website, where you can learn more about CLEAN's resources and including tips for bringing climate and energy into the classroom. So I'll put that link into the chat here. And with that, I will turn it over to Karin.
Awesome. Thank you, Alicia, and thanks, folks, for coming today. Busy day in the news sphere. So thanks for taking time out of a hectic life these days. So if you're new to the CLEAN idea, is that we're here to help teachers and be the best teachers they can be when it comes to teaching climate and energy and supporting students. But we're also here for just general advancement of literacy, citizen literacy about climate and energy. And this talk is obviously focused on energy. So I'm gonna jump right in. So this has to do with jobs, specifically where are the jobs in wind and sun, and this is American focus on the 50 states. Where's the potential for jobs? Where's the wind blow the hardest, sun shine the most reliably? And how does that spread out across the 50 states? Which ones are using their potential, which aren't? And how can we as advocates for climate and modern energy use this framing of jobs to try to motivate for renewable energy policy, and also to tap into our students' interests in technology and energy and solutions kind of work on climate. And so how does this tie into the classroom stuff? So CLEAN is primarily focused on education. Really, we want every teacher to have the confidence and the tools and the support to be the best they can be. But then again, there's also a lot of everyday issues that we're all interested in. I'm from Montana, and in Montana, if we look at what's going on in energy, it's very much centered around protecting the coal industry. And renewable energy in many different ways, whether it's cars or solar panels or whatever it is seen as a threat to that. And so that's interesting. That's sort of the state we live in. If you back up and look at the country, you see this potential infrastructure plan that has a lot of good news potentially for the renewable energy industry. But regardless of where you are and what your state is like versus this country, you know, there's a common theme that politicians of all stripes, they all have a thing that they say that you hear over and over again, and what they will reference whatever the issue is to jobs. And we can speak that language too. And advocacy is best when you kind of wade into the other sphere and adopt, you know, at least understand their priorities and see how you can mesh with that rather than expecting them to come over to your side. So that's what sort of the background motivation for me to look at where jobs are. And for too long, you hear this jobs versus the environment. And thankfully, we're hearing less of that. But that's been used as to sort of leverage the idea that, well, hey, we got to keep going with extractive and heavily polluting industries for the sake of the jobs. But really, if you take a step back, there's always a need for energy. It's just going to be a different kind of energy. There's always going to be energy jobs that can never change. And so it's not jobs versus the environment, it's just which jobs are we talking about? And so we can really turn this around now and say it's jobs and the environment. There's no versus. It's really all on the same side here. And so that's a very just sort of elegant way to start to twist this around, or not twist it around, but reframe it so that we're, instead of feeling adversarial, we're feeling like we're collaborative to work for both jobs and the environment. It's no longer an either. So looking at jobs data, energy jobs are tracked by separately, and you can actually delve into the data and get into each state in different sectors of each state's energy economy. I just, in this case, looked at wind and solar, and just looking at where the jobs are. They're in the utility itself, in construction, in manufacturing, trades, professional services, consulting, things like that. So a bunch of different aspects of the wind industry and the solar energy industry. And this data is a 2020 report, but it comes from late 2019, which is kind of good because it's pre-COVID. So you're getting sort of a non-disrupted view of the energy industry. So jumping in, so solar jobs, there's a lot of jobs in solar energy, 344,000 jobs in solar electricity generation. So that's not every aspect of solar. So that wouldn't include things to do with solar that aren't generating electricity. So solar hot water, for example, would be separate. But this is by far the biggest sector of solar economy, let's just say. California, the lion's share of those jobs, and Alaska, the fewest. And the spread between the two is remarkable, the difference in scale between how many jobs different states have. And if you put up any map of the states, it's really actually neat, whether you're talking to students or anybody, like people start zooming in on their state, maybe where they live, maybe where they're from, maybe a state that they really like, or where their family lives, or whatever. But so it's instantly engaging. And so this is just a color-coded map of where the jobs are in various states. The red shade for California is the leader in jobs. The gray is for states that have not so many jobs, fewer than 500 jobs, and then the orange and yellow throughout. So hopefully your eye is moving around this map and trying to see how your state is and how your state compares to other places. Alicia will post the link to the article that this came from, and the maps are interactive. So as your mouse moves around the map, it shows up the values showing, which is really handy when you want to compare different areas. So that's where the solar jobs are. Wind jobs, the wind industry is smaller in terms of as employment, but a little over 100,000 people. Texas, similar to California, like there's this one state that really dominates a big chunk. And then Delaware is this, smallest geographical state, or I guess, or maybe Rhode Island is. Anyway, small state, fewer jobs. Not every state has as much space. Whoops. So here's the darker blue, the more jobs. There's Texas with lots of jobs. You see the coastline, decent amount. California, Colorado has a lot of jobs, research as well as generating. Montana, my home state, is ranking 48th. Alaska and Delaware over here are the ones with fewer than 100 jobs in wind. So there's just this huge range, and it's just even just these two maps is enough to spin a lot of different conversations about what's going on in different parts of the country. But think of where the wind blows and where the sun shines. It's very unequal. And so if just to compare wind jobs in all 50 states, it's not a completely fair deal. Not everybody has a lot of wind or a lot of sun. These slides showing the sort of annoying aspects of wind and sun. But so we can measure the potential, like how much could we generate? And this figure is a remake from the National Renewable Energy Laboratory. But so the resource potential is just to do with like how much wind or sun just is blowing. And the technical potential gets into a little bit about, well, you can't put wind turbines, too close together, and you can't put them on steep slopes, and you can't put them in national parks, things like that. And then the economic potential starts to deal with, well, what's the pricing, and what's the cost of building the system, and what's the cost of fuel that you're comparing it to. And then the market potential gets into like, well, what's the competition like, and how far we have to transmit the energy. And so these types of potential get more and more specific, but also more and more uncertain, because it's hard to say like market potential is going to include, say, tax policy. And it's hard to say how that might change in the future, or how to compare tax policy in North Dakota versus Minnesota. So that those are interesting estimates at the top, but they become more of an estimate. And down at the bottom, they're more of a measurement. These are some of the details that you don't need to worry about. But for this, I focused on technical potential, and I talked to the National Renewables Energy Laboratory to try to figure out what's the best way to wrap our head around, like, what is the potential in all 50 states? And technical potential seemed like a good way to estimate it. So we're looking at the land itself. What's it used for, and could it be built? Could renewable energy be built there? What's the topography? And then system performance means, like, what's the potential of actual solar panels and wind turbines to turn that wind and sun into energy? So they have a great report that goes through all 50 states and times 10 different renewable energy technologies to add up the technical potential for generating renewable energy in the US. It's quite an impressive piece of work. So for this, I just used this wind and solar. But even within solar, this map is the solar technical potential across all 50 states. And this is a combination, just a sum, of generating utility scale solar in cities, doing the same thing like big solar farms in rural areas. And that's by far the biggest contribution. And then rooftop photovoltaics, that whether they're private, commercial, or residential, or businesses or campuses, whatever, adding it all together. Okay, the brighter the red, the more the potential. And this is in terawatt hours per year. A terawatt hour is 1 million megawatt hours. So, and the numbers don't matter so much as the comparison. So you may have seen maps like this that don't go by state, they just go by, little, some land area. And so this is interesting to just do it by state. And you see that Texas, it has the biggest technical potential. And in part, that's because Texas is a big state. And so they get, all the sun across within that whole state boundary. So just in general, looking at comparing the states, the bigger the state, you're just going to have more potential. You have that much more area. If the state has a lot of open space, you also get more potential. If the state has a lot of steep slopes, that lowers the potential, and protected areas also lowers it. So some of the states that have a lot of national parks have a somewhat smaller technical potential because that's unbuildable land. So like if you look at Utah, why is like almost every state around it has a higher potential? And that's why it's a combination of protected areas and steep slopes. But there are some things in here, some questions in here that I can't necessarily answer because this is NREL data. But it kind of makes, it totally makes sense. You see New England as being, less in terms of it's northerly, and it also has less sunshine. Same in the Pacific Northwest. Surprisingly, a lot of sun up here in the northern Great Plains. And yeah, the Southwest, of course, you'd expect that too. So interesting to start to compare what's the potential for generating solar electricity. And now if you divide those two things, so if you take how many jobs are there, divide it by what's the potential. So what this map tells you is who is really getting bang for their buck out of their sunshine. So it doesn't look like the last map where it was all concentrated in the Southwest. What jumps out is Massachusetts. What's going on there? So Massachusetts, California has the most solar jobs, and Massachusetts has the second most, which is really interesting. You might not expect that. And so by dividing the number of jobs by the potential, then you start to see really who's leading. So the whole Mid-Atlantic region is sort of a nice dark color. They have sort of mediocre potential, but they have quite a few jobs. And so that gives them a high ratio, and Massachusetts totally crushing it on that. So interesting, you wouldn't expect Massachusetts to necessarily be a leader in solar, but they are given their potential. Hawaii, a very small land area, but great sunshine all year long. A lot of jobs, 4,000 jobs in solar electricity generation. So they're second place in their jobs to sunshine ratio. Texas was the leader in the raw number of potential, and fifth place in jobs, but their potential is so much bigger than every other state that they're actually, when you divide those two, it kind of washes out. And so they're sort of average, which is interesting. So that's to say, Texas, you have a lot more potential, like good job, but keep going. You have a lot more sunshine you can take advantage of. And so again, this way of looking at it kind of keeps a place like Texas from totally resting on their laurels, and you could push harder. You can say you can do more. You have a bigger potential. The sad gray color in the northern Rockies and the Dakotas, any of the gray states, they're underperforming. So strong solar potential up here, but solar job development is pretty low. And so you get a very poor ratio. And so this is potential that's left on the table. It's really untapped potential. Moving to wind, same steps, just repeating themselves. So this is the wind technical potential. This is a sum of onshore and offshore added together. There's separate databases. If you're interested in wind technical potential, there's a very new, like extremely new data set where it doesn't go out by all 50 states, but if you're interested in this kind of thing, there's some great new data from the same people from NREL. But look at this nice dark blue stripe. So it's the Great Plains that is really rich in wind, in technical potential. So the Rocky Mountain states have some areas of higher wind, but again, harder to develop the resource in terms of the topography and things like that. So it's this starting from Texas and going straight up the middle here to South Dakota. These 4 states are the richest states for their wind potential. Offshore wind also high, and like even states, Great Lakes states count as having offshore wind potential. And then that gets lower as you go down the coast. Of course, the West Coast too, lots of offshore, and Alaska too. So yeah, all kinds of, you think of like where all the coastlines are. But so big potential depending on where you are. Oh, and in the Southeast, I'm going to get to that later, but quite low potential for wind. Here's the jobs divided by the technical potential. So where are the jobs versus where is the wind? And so one thing that I noticed about that, if you look at the original map of just the potential on the left and then the jobs for potential, if you look at these maps back and forth, they're almost opposites of each other. So where you have these fairly navy blue states here, you see they're actually quite low performing gray. Or in the southern Appalachian states, you see not a lot of potential, but then you see really strong ratio of jobs to potential. So it's a little more complicated on this one, worth just explaining a little bit, and especially the Southeast, because it's a little bit unusual, but everywhere is worth understanding. So if you look at the light colors here, it's low potential. They have not a lot of wind. They have not a lot of fetch in terms of the wind because of the topography and the forestry and stuff like that. The wind doesn't flow over across long distances. If you look at the jobs, they're like, there's this color indicates somewhere between 100 and 1,000. Most of them are in the sort of low hundreds, 100, 200 jobs in each of those states. But then this is the ratio. If you think of a ratio, if you have a low potential, but then you have some jobs, it actually gets you a pretty good number. And so partly why the jobs to potential map looks so good for the Southeast is because their potential is pretty low. This map shows the amount of wind energy that's being generated so far, like how many wind farms have they built compared to their technical potential. And there's this huge gray area. So many of these states have no wind turbines at all. So how does that work? How do you get wind jobs and no wind generation? And so you have to dig a little deeper into what do we mean by renewable energy jobs. It's not just where the wind farm is or where the solar farm is. There are, of course, all the stuff that it takes. And again, this speaks really well to the job potential in these industries. So NREL has this cool tool. You can look around all different facets of renewable energy, but these are just facilities that have to do with making wind turbines, and whether that's the blades or the towers or whatever it is. So lo and behold, the Southeast, while it's not building wind turbines for their own states, they're building them for other states. And so those are still wind jobs. In northern Mississippi, there's a big facility that's just for the distribution of the parts that get shipped all over the place, so for both wind turbines and for solar panels. So yeah, there's a big support industry that goes to wind and solar as well. And so those jobs then in the Southeast are adding to their total, even though they're not generating that wind right there in their state. So it's take advantage of these growing industries regardless of their resource, right? Because everywhere needs the supplies. So again, this is a map of how much wind capacity, meaning how many wind turbines and what's their generating capacity, have been installed compared to their potential. So this is basically taking jobs out of the picture and just saying, well, how much are you generating compared to your potential? So the Southeast, not much. They have a low potential and they have low capacity. In some cases, the capacity is actually zero. You see a little bit better here in this breadbasket area. And yeah, this one's a little more sort of spotty when you go through the 50 states. Getting back to the wind jobs per wind potential. So a couple of other key points. In the Great Plains, so these again, the sad gray color, these states are really underperforming. The potential is massive through all of these states, but jobs are pretty low. Montana, my home state, if you were ranked 7th for the wind resource, but we have a grand total of 86 jobs in wind energy. And so that's the worst ratio of job creation versus the natural potential of our state. Alaska, Wyoming are very similar. And so then you go to think about themes and you think, well, these are fossil fuel producing states. And as earlier in the slides, you see these states are doubling down on their fossil fuel production and trying to keep the renewable energy interests at bay to protect their fossil fuel industries. That's a good news, bad news situation. Of course, it's bad news because it's frustrating. These states are leaving jobs on the table and leaving potential on the table. The good news is it's time for those industries to switch. They have their answer very readily. And so for these Northern Great Plains states, it's, what it's going to be, it's almost more of a ideological barrier than it is an economic or a physical barrier. And so things can happen. We have potential. But now, there's of course going to be other processes that go into that. So that gets into the motivation of by using jobs and using all 50 states, you instantly get this sense of competition to what are our neighboring states doing. And so each state seems to have that state that they compete with. For Montana, it's North Dakota. North Dakota has 20 times the wind jobs that Montana does. And you tell Montanans that and they're like, what, come on, how could North Dakota be beating us? And so you have same little rivalry. So here in this article, they're same thing, South Dakota, Minnesota, they're going, hey, in Minnesota, they have 3 times the employment in wind as South Dakota does. So that's great. So this is how to use this kind of thing to try to motivate clean energy policy. And we're not even talking about climate. We're just talking about the economics of it. And that can be a good way to get more people on board. Not everyone is interested in climate, unfortunately. So if we come back to these lawmakers of all stripes, we're not going to be able to convince every lawmaker that climate change is the priority. It's my priority, but I can't expect to be persuasive by asking someone else to adopt my priority. But I know their priority and I'm going to combine the two. So we're going to talk about what about solar jobs and wind jobs and energy efficiency jobs, infrastructure jobs, technology jobs. There's a lot of exciting stuff that any politician can get behind. And so that's this whole little case study is an example of how to shift the framing to try to use the priorities of your audience versus trying to convey your priorities to them. And so you want to talk about jobs? Great. Let's talk about jobs. We'll meet you there. And I'm going to be a climate advocate for energy jobs, clean energy jobs. Pivoting to classroom stuff. So Clean has over 700 free educational resources that are designed for from elementary school all the way up through college. They're searchable, sortable, there's a huge variety of stuff. And it's all vetted, so you won't find any, random conspiracy theories in this collection. It's very, very carefully vetted by different panels of reviewers, educators, and scientists. So I'm going to just kind of take a little spin through how do you, I have been talking about politics and stuff like that, but students don't care about that, which is great. But this is important to students too. First of all, the career path. There are all kinds of emerging careers in energy, in renewable energy conservation. And so we've got some stuff just to introduce students to the idea of some of these modern energy jobs and the type of STEM skills that they would need for those jobs. We have a suite of activities that are sort of engineering based, which is great when you want to work within the next generation science standards and help students develop skills that are going to be sort of cross-disciplinary and societally relevant. You'll recognize this is, again, NREL stuff. So this is a NREL mapping tool that maps, in this case, solar energy. And there's these labs built around it where students can calculate the amount of solar energy and look at the costs and look at the environmental impact. They're like little mini consultants here. And it's really great. These are excellent activities that are designed to help students kind of step into that role. And there's a series of them. And so once you've kind of done one with your students, the interface will be familiar and you can kind of step through some of the other ones. And so these are really neat ways to get your students kind of, again, career focus and economics focus for clean energy. Everyone is interested in your states if you want to do state by state stuff. So some of the same maps and data that I used in this analysis, you can are available for anyone. A very user-friendly website to look at all the 50 states and where the wind blows and compare to the different states. Lots of sort of open-ended exploration that can be done with that in the classroom. The Energy Information Administration, EIA, has a series of 50 state energy profiles. Those are pretty interesting. They dig deep into a little bit of the history of the electricity generation and energy import and export and fuel sources. And again, pretty neat. And this activity is sort of layered on top of those profiles, and it's a way to walk the students through the resource and focus there looking at it rather than just turning them loose, which, you know, depending on the grade level, may or may not work. There's all kinds of hands-on stuff. I mean, solar panels are sexy. We know that, right? Wind turbines are cool. And so students can definitely start working on those things in their classroom. So this is another one of these teach engineering resources where the students have little solar panels and they look at the angle that it's going to be facing the sunlight, and they do some quantitative stuff and they really get in there to try to figure out what's optimal angle. Similarly with wind turbines, they're looking at how can you get the most energy out of your wind turbine that you're building. It's hands-on, it's engineering related, it's quantitative, it's design focused. So there's a lot of really cool concepts in these. Data Wrapper is a tool that I use to make these maps, and it's fascinating. And so for upper level teaching, or for people that just are into data noodling, or journalists, which is who this tool is made for, these are how you make interactive maps. And so if your students are looking at case studies or any kind of data with climate, energy, or anything, you can churn this stuff out onto maps pretty quickly and elegantly. And so it's a very neat tool for, again, higher level students, but quite easy to use, free. Yeah, just can't say enough good things about this tool for students that want to engage directly into some databases. Clean has some background stuff on like how to impart the principles of energy literacy and climate literacy to your students. So this is in our teaching energy section of the website, but this has to do with like, how do we make energy decisions? So, and to help students understand this, like, it can't just be like, oh, hey, I don't like nuclear energy, so cross that off. Like, energy is complicated. There's economics, there's political factors, there's social factors, you know, and so to keep students more immersed in the reality of how we make these decisions rather than just a sort of this, you know, vacuum chamber of like making a decision in isolation. You know, today's students are much better served by looking at these more complex interdisciplinary processes. So this page goes through all about energy decisions and then links to every activity in the Clean collection that has to do with energy decisions. Over on the teaching climate side, same thing, a sequence of pages that goes through climate literacy. And this one has to do with like, what are we going to do about climate change? Like, you don't want to leave students just like paralyzed with fear that we've ruined the world. So get on board with solutions. And so this page goes through all kinds of solutions and how to teach them. This is a screenshot of the Clean collection with our many, 700 and something resources. And you can then limit it down. And so this is now just searching the humans can take action to address climate change. And so that's one way to start looking and narrowing down, looking at your solutions. You can also just search the collection by keyword, solar panels, wind turbines. But for sure, we've heard from teachers and students that tackling climate change, feeling constructive and solutions oriented is a great way to not just get gripped by the bad news. So that wraps it up. Just a couple more things of what Clean does. So lots of ways you can use Clean. We have all those resources I was just showing you. We have an email where you can sign up for a little STEM flash about science in the news, basically, and how you can bring that into your classroom. The Clean collection is grown by people like you that know of educational activities and can tell us about them, and we can review them. The Clean Network is a group that does teleconferences, phone calls, actual meetings, like in the face-to-face future world. And we have one more webinar this week, but we do a whole webinar series every semester. And so we try to be as active as we can to try to support teachers. But tomorrow, a very interesting topic. If you're interested in this topic, you're probably interested in this one, which is like, how do you have that conversation with communities that might not be so into the idea of climate change? And so this is a middle and high school teacher who has worked in these sort of more contentious environments and has some great lessons to share. So that is it. I am going to unshare and see if you have any questions.
Thank you so much, Karin. Yes, do any of our attendees have any questions? Feel free to put them in the chat or just raise your hand and I can allow you to talk.
Oh, Alicia, it looks like some of the links went to panelists instead of.
Oh gosh, I had them all set up. Oh,
all
yeah.
that way. Oh, oh man. Okay, so if you want the links, hang out and she'll post them.
Yeah, sorry, I'll repost all those links. I put a whole bunch in the chat. Yes. Let me repost all those. Sorry about that.
And thank you, Karin, for that comment. Yes, good. Yeah, it is. It's interesting to, there you go. Geography, I think, is particularly interesting to look at where things are going on, you know, how that affects your area.
Other questions? I'm curious for our attendees.
Yeah.
If what grades you guys all teach, or if you teach.
Eighth grade, yay. Texas. There you go. Texas has been, you know, I don't need to tell you this, but an interesting energy situation. And I was in a hearing on one of these Montana coal power plant bills, and all everyone could talk about was Texas and how that means that Montana should double down on coal. I'm not sure how they got that lesson from Texas happenings, but that's how they entered. Yeah, that's okay. That's why people like me are there to say, like, no, that's not right.
Yeah. Seems like the energy sector is just, and especially in some of these states, Montana and Texas and places, I mean, seems like there will be a lot of good opportunities for your students in the future, hopefully to get into some of these energy jobs if they're interested.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
Let's see, it looks like there's a question from Randy. So do any of the maps that you showed or any of the data sources provide data in per capita or per area terms?
Right.
Seems that would be, yeah, most relevant in some cases.
Yep, they don't, but that's not such hard math to do. And I really went back and forth about whether to do that or not. And ended up not, because it could have gotten very complicated, but it depends on really what question you're trying to answer. But yeah, because like if you look at fossil fuel like coal and things like that, you know, it's not like Montana, Wyoming, and West Virginia are the coal producing states with very, very small populations. And so like looking at, if you're just going to analog to that, population matters maybe less than the resource intensity is my view of it, but it could, you know, it's certainly a map that could be easily made. And same with the per area. So NREL has lots of data that is on a more like, they're just sort of pixel sized grids instead of the whole states. And so that's where you can see that the spots, like these are the really intense areas for energy potential resources. So yeah, there's all kinds of ways you can slice this one out.
Any other questions out there? Make sure that you, if you haven't had a chance, copy those links that are in the chat. There's a lot of really great links to really great resources there. If you want to get access to some of the data that Karin shared, and you know, a lot of those resources that are in our clean collection too, that have great lessons for your students.
Awesome.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Karin, for joining us today. And yes, if you all can, please join us for our webinar tomorrow as well. And we will see you then.
Yep. Sounds great. Take care, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Randy.